The inherent monopolistic nature of infrastructure assets, coupled with the significant demand and supply mismatch in India, makes infrastructure assets an attractive value proposition for long-term strategic players.
Inherently, you get a good mix of both domestic and international investors who are attracted to the sector. The domestic investors, particularly the sponsors and the large promoter groups, have taken the lead in the build-out phase, and that's primarily on account of the fact that they're able to manage and deal with the construction risk a lot better than some of the international players.
But once the construction phase is complete, we see increased interest from international and institutional players.
These are institutional investors with long-term perspective like pension funds, your insurance companies, sovereign and wealth funds, who are looking to pick up a piece in some of these assets so that they can hold them for a long duration and match their own cash flows.
Being a developing economy, India offers a higher rate of return on infrastructure investments than developed economies. However, with this higher rate of return comes higher risks for investors.
One, broadly, is the construction risks. There are delays that you face on account of land acquisition, on account of consents and approvals not coming in on time, and then just supervening events which are outside your control. And as a result, a lot of domestic promoter sponsor groups have been able to take that risk a lot better than international players have been able to do. Therefore, you see a lot of domestic players taking the charge on building out these assets. The other key risk that I would highlight is the regulatory risk that exists. We have a fairly complicated regulatory environment, which is not uncommon for infrastructure assets the world over. But more than the complexity, I think the bigger risk that we've seen the investors getting uncomfortable with is the changing regulatory environment and the instability that it has come with. One other thing to highlight, which isn't necessarily a risk but an issue, is the cost of financing. Internationally, infrastructure assets have a fairly low cost of debt. These are long-term gestation assets, so therefore lenders and financiers are able to provide relatively cheap funding. We've not been able to achieve that in India as yet, and I think there is a significant room for deregulation of our debt financing structures and incentives that the government can give to try and encourage investment in the debt sector for some of these financings.
Despite the issues highlighted, it is critical for investors to remember that the Indian infrastructure sector remains strong, offering significant growth potential for those who have a long-term view not only on these assets but also the Indian economy.
There are risks that one needs to manage, but I think those risks can be managed through good due diligence. There will be some unforeseen risks that come up, but we have faith in our contractual regime and in our judiciary, and that investment will continue to flow into the infrastructure sector as we go forward.